Welcome to Every Trait, the pro biopunk philosophy channel. You may call me ZJ for now, and we are still in phase one, pop culture. The second of our rewrites will be the character Dren from the movie Spliced. If you haven't seen it, congratulations. If you have seen it, I'm sorry. So in the movie Spliced, the scientists are plot devices. They're not people. The plot twists itself into a pretzel in order to make Dren a villain. And ultimately, it can be categorized as an anti-gene mod hit piece, basically, designed to make you afraid of anything new or different. So for our rewrite, we're going to need to also change the entire reason why Dren was created, because the reason in the movie didn't really make a lot of sense. They were trying to mine like proteins and enzymes that could be useful for humans by randomly making something new. But the reason why you can mine species for that out in nature is because they've evolved resistances and protections from different things. But if you make something random from scratch, it's not going to have evolved anything. And while it could make some sense what they were doing, it was never really fully explained. And I feel like we need to come up with a more compelling reason, because even if what they were doing made sense, which depending on the situation, depending on the kind of software they were using to like the AI they were using to combine the genes, they might have been able to create something useful. But even then, they would only need it on paper and then just synthesize the products, or they could have just used cells, individual cells. They wouldn't have need to grow a whole organism. So we need a better reason. So we're going to completely rewrite the story, but keep Dren the same basic entity, except she's not going to grow up really fast. She's going to grow up about 10% faster than normal, not thousands of times faster than normal. If you were to grow up that fast, you'd have severe developmental problems. Your bones, your brain, everything would be bad. So why was she created? So we're going to have to completely rewrite the story. It's going to be very different. So there was a strange outbreak of something we'll call the foreign agent, because it's not a prokaryote, it's not a eukaryote. It doesn't match anything in nature. And it is bad. It eats plastic, it eats through filters and safeguards, it infects any animal, it causes like a rabies-like effect where they become aggressive, but they don't necessarily die right away. And it spreads very quickly. Luckily, birds can't seem to quite fly when they're affected by it. They kind of just tumble out of the sky. And fish also kind of just flop up onto shore. And it was released on an island in an archipelago. And so everyone who went there to try to study it ended up getting infected. So they tried to wipe it out by basically carpet bombing the island, but this just caused it to spread to neighboring islands. So this was a big mistake. So they need someone who's immune to be able to go to the islands and study it there. They can't take it to the mainland. It could wipe out an entire continent in like a week. But right now it's isolated to the islands. That's good. They know how to make someone immune with gene therapy. The problem is gene therapy isn't legal everywhere, and even if it were, most people wouldn't get it. And even if they did, you wouldn't be able to use gene therapy on all wildlife, all nature that it can spread. You can spread through insects. You can spread through anything. So that doesn't work. So they need to modify people, send them to the island to study it and find a way to shut it down. But this would be a multi-generational study. So it needs to be germline. That means they would pass on their new traits to their children. And so they need proof of concept. They need to know that it would work embryologically, that a child like that could grow up and continue the research, because this research might take like 100 years. Hopefully in the first decade or so, they could figure out how to better contain it to the island so it doesn't spread further. But so that's why they create Dren. Dren is just a proof of concept. That's all she is. So this story would be done as sort of a biopic. It would be across her lifetime, different events, a lot of time skips, really getting to know the character, not making her into a one-dimensional movie villain. So she grows up in a lab, but the other scientists have kids, and they bring them there to play with her, so she develops more normally. And this is when the first sort of inciting incident happens. She accidentally injures one when playing. Her stinger developed earlier than they thought it would, and she stung one of the other kids, and the kid has permanent nerve damage. So the project is shut down. The public finds out about it, and they're pissed. And so Dren and two of the scientists who are her adopted parents take her to an asylum nation, basically a microstate. They live out a fairly regular life there. She grows up, she's homeschooled, but she does mix with other people at, sporting and things like that, like extracurricular activities. She develops likes, dislikes, fears, friends, enemies, and then everything goes wrong. The asylum state has problems, economic problems, really big issues that the people in charge are not dealing with. What do people in charge do when they have no intention of helping, but they want to keep the support of the people? They find scapegoats and they defend you. They make you truly believe these scapegoats are your enemy. And then they defend you from these scapegoats. So that way they look like they're on your side. They're fighting for you. They're really not. They invented an enemy and they're protecting you from this imaginary enemy. So they do that. And what's the most out-groupy person in the area? Well, that's Dren. So they write a new law. People like Dren aren't allowed to exist. She's going to be captured, possibly euthanized, at the very least sterilized, maybe lobotomized. So the police show up at her house. Riot cops show up at her house to try to capture her. Her parents try to stop them. One of them shoots her dad. She, in the confusion, stings that riot cop. This doesn't end him. It's just, it's just a paralytic. But he spins around and, lets off a couple more shots. One of them hits someone's bulletproof vest. They're fine. But the other one hits someone. Yeah. So now there is a dead officer, which is a problem. So she runs, and in the media, you hear a very different story. She went crazy. She attacked her own dad and the police. The media completely tells a different story than what really happened. And so she disappears. Also in the media, you see people talking about the disease on the island and how no one's come up with a cure and no one's come up with even a way to research it because you can't go there and you can't take it from there. Of course, having watched this story, you know that's not true. Dren was meant to be the solution. But that didn't happen. The story ends 2 years later. We see a general from behind watching a bank of monitors of satellite feeds. And they zoom in on one of the islands, which the disease has now spread to the entire archipelago. And we see a campfire that was recently burning. It's just smoldering a little bit, which means she fled to the one place no one could follow. And she's surviving there. Proof of concept achieved. Unfortunately, the world doesn't see it that way. The public has been convinced that there is no cure, and as a result, the foreign agent may one day reach mainland. Now, what is this general doing? Is he going to try to eliminate her? Is he going to try to copy her to make super soldiers? Or is he going to try to help her cure the disease? We don't know. The audience isn't told, and the viewer is meant to guess. There's no sequel. It's up to the viewer what happens next. So that's our story. A much more complex story, a much more realistic, I think, story than what you got in Spliced. Not an anti-GeneMod propaganda hit piece, but rather a real story looking at the technology and the possible political pitfalls of it, because the physical pitfalls of it are not nearly as extreme as what you're normally taught. Yes, you could create diseases with it, but it's already easy to create diseases. People can already do that. And with more advanced biotechnology, we'll be able to cure them more easily. So you're not actually making it easy to create diseases by preventing genetic technology. You're actually making it harder to cure them. It's already easy to make them. You're making it harder to cure them. So we need to see more stories where genetic technology is the protagonist and the people fighting against it are the antagonists, because that's honestly how I see it. Honestly, I think the movie Species is probably better than Spliced. See, Spliced sold itself as a deep look at genetic technology, but it didn't ask any questions. It didn't answer any questions. It was just a bunch of tropes. Species was also a bunch of tropes, but was honest about what it was in its advertising. So, you know, basically the same story, more or less, between the two of them, but at least Species was honest about what it was. Splice tried to pretend it was some intellectual thing, which it was not. Anyway, the next video will be a bit of a silly one, but it'll be another rewrite, our final rewrite. So for now, thank you for listening. I have been ZJ. And remember, always gene mod responsibly. Clicky, 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 clicky.